So it's 6:35 on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day, 2022. And we do have a quorum present. I'm going to call the meeting to order. We need to announce that the planning board meetings are still being held both in person and remotely pursuant to an act relative to extending certain COVID measures adopted during the state of emergency by Governor Baker on June 16th, 2021. And it allows public bodies to meet remotely. The chair and quorum of the public body are not required to be physically present at the specified location, but may participate remotely. And we must conduct the meetings pursuant to open meeting law and enable members of the public to join into the meetings. The meetings being recorded live and digitally recorded. Members of the planning board who are physically present are myself, Alice Livedall, and Christopher Monroe. Members meeting remotely are just Franz Prostagger. Absent tonight are Bill Homans and John Demalia, and our alternate member, Erica Deck. But we do have, and our clerk here is Mallory Seaman, who'll be conducting the meeting, but we do have a quorum, so we're gonna hold the meeting. So is there any from the public there that wishes to comment? We start with public comments? None. Okay, moving on, we have one set of minutes to approve. They're from March 2020, which is our last meeting. Want to make a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, I'll make that second.
Seconded.
Some discussion?
Nope.
France, I can't hear you. No? Okay, I just have
No
one
discussion.
comment. One quick thing is on the status of the tax taking lots on the second page. I think instead of saying lot parcel 643, it'll be 6-43
Okay,
because it's map 6,
parcel 43. Easy enough.
Other than that, I don't have any corrections. Any other comments?
Nope.
Hearing none, proceed to a vote. You want to start, Francois?
Yes.
You have to, yeah, you have
Yes.
to say your name. Okay.
Councilor Steiger, yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay, done. So we're mostly focused on affordable housing things tonight, which actually it says, because there is no, new business. We don't have new business, but we do have a matter of old business that maybe I'll stick in here. We have an A&R we can get 2 signatures for, right? This was introduced 2 weeks ago. We approved it, and the guy didn't have the Malars and we weren't here. Or we can just sign it on the way out the door.
Yeah.
Okay, you hang on to, don't let us escape without signing it though, because it has been approved. All right, so then we'll move on. Affordable housing, this is finally we have a meeting without a crowd of new business and we have a lot of new items. But I wanted to give you one chance to give us an update on the farm accessory use bylaw.
Yep, we had our first meeting. At the first meeting, I was elected to chair.
Right.
We established a process where we're going to go through information collection, then we set some strategic goals, and then we're going to start talking about specific elements that we think make sense for the town. There was an issue that came up at the meeting that it's also come up at this board, where there's some questions about the definition of accessory use and what falls under that, because the state guidelines are based upon income. But we have a bunch more research to do on that, and hope to get to the bottom of it.
Okay. Thank you for that report. June. You're our ARPA delegate. Do you have anything you want to report on ARPA relative to the planning board?
Well, the ARPA committee went through and it approved the first. Well, it didn't approve it. It made its first flight of recommendations that represented 160,000 or so of the roughly 1.4 million that we currently have. It was mostly large town projects that picked it up so far. There's going to be a second tier going through the next time the committee meets. The next meeting date hasn't been set yet. There's 2 possible dates.
Okay. Well, if you think any of our projects can qualify, let me know.
Well, the
Meaning planning board.
the Habitat House did get a recommendation from the ARPA
Okay.
committee to be advanced to the select board. Ultimately, the select board makes the decision, but
Okay.
the the opera committee pushed it forward.
Okay, so I wanted to stay also with respect to that. The grant awards, would they come out before or after town meeting? Do you know?
They will likely be before.
Okay, because what Habitat did is they've also asked for CPC money, affordable housing money, which we have, this Affordable Housing Committee had, and we approved it Tuesday night. Well, we did it before, but we didn't know how many other applicants we would have for the meeting because people expressed interest and then nobody else applied and we cut it off for this town meeting. So we have a CPA article for 25,000 for the Habit for Humanity. Now they can't take more than they need, right? And we are having some success in raising money, which I'll talk about in a minute. So if I could report to Carolyn which the order would be and the weight would be, or whether they would pass, and I don't know.
So the opera committee did discuss that.
Yes, what did they decide?
And we decided to pass it forward with recommendation and let the select board figure that out in terms of what they wanted to go on the warrant, what they didn't want to go on the warrant, and what should be with CPC and what shouldn't be. So
Okay, well, that's helpful. If you see it coming up, is it discussion,
it'll certainly be coming up on the next select board meeting.
which would be Monday or
Mhm.
week from
Yeah,
now?
I believe
Monday.
it is Monday.
Monday, and I should probably try to come to that. You want to call me and remind me?
Yeah.
And I will talk to Carolyn in the meantime. I don't think, I don't think they care about the source. It's just that we're going to have a shortfall if we don't get it from somewhere, despite our best efforts,
Well,
I think.
one of
So-
the kind of the thing, well, not kind of, the thing that drove the conversation the most at the upper meeting is none of us are really experts on how CPC funding works. And there were some questions about whether if ARPA money went for this, that CPC money could be used for other affordable housing projects and not be tied up in the housing, but nobody.
I will come and be prepared to answer that, but I'm quite sure you would just pass over and it would remain in the housing funds.
Yep.
And we have other news on that. I'll come and I'll talk to Carolyn about it. I just didn't know the order in which things would be rewarded, because when I talked to them, they said, well, maybe we'll consider it the second round of funding, and then that would be after town meeting.
Well, the select
So-
board does have it within their discretion to do that, but as far as the upper committee is concerned, it's on its way. But
Okay,
the select board will likely make some decisions based upon budgeting off of the ARPA recommendations.
okay, great. Thanks. I want to move along. I do want to say with respect to, and I'll be there, with respect to other affordable housing, the Habitat for Humanity for this project, which is on Ragged Hill Road, we just got a $5,000 grant from Berry Savings Foundation. So we've now, I don't know what the total line is, but that does bring us up to at least 20,000, I believe, of the 35 we were supposed to raise. But the project is also more expensive because of cost overruns. So it may go, even though our 35,000 might not have closed the gap, but we're working on it. I'll try to fine tune it. But that was a big boost for us. And we're going to, anybody wants to can come out to the house tomorrow at 1:00. And it's going to be presented to us by Stephen Brewer, the old state rep and senator, who apparently now serves on the foundation board. Anyway, so that's good news. And if everybody's welcome again, it's 1:00. On the March 5th, we had the mid-build ceremony. We met the new owner, Kara, and her daughter, Zoe. She has another daughter who's going to be living there too, who's a very competitive dancer and was at an event. They're very nice folks. They were really grateful and excited to be there. It was quite nice. Also there at that same building, we had a bunch of Habitat people from Bentley College, all girls, and they were there to build the shed. That one day, it was all lined up with the expert there to teach them how to do it. Just a lot of excitement. It was a good time. So I also want to announce that we have 2 fundraisers coming up. They're very interesting. One's a virtual wine tasting at Wachusett Vineyards. I have flyers for them to hand out. And Mallory's going to post a flyer, right? Here you go. So the way these virtual wine tastings work, I went to one that was for Habitat for Humanity North Central for the whole region. Is you sign up through the website, and this one comes with, I think, 3 bottles of wine and cheese from Smith's Country Cheese and Westfield Farm, and you pick them up. And because this is being sponsored by Wachusett Vineyards, they will actually deliver it to your house if you want to attend. And then you tune in and you learn a lot about wines. You learn a lot about, you have your cheese and your wine. You have everybody's there on the big Zoom board, whatever platform they use. And there's also an auction that goes on. It's fun. And it's all local, and all the proceeds are going to this house project. So that's one. And then if you're more into in-person events, May 5th, there's a Beers to Build at Worcester Brewery, where everybody that shows up and buys a beer that day, they donate $1 for every beer sold.
Oh, cool.
So they're great fundraisers. And I did want to get out to the public, and we have to put it on our board and get some publicity for them. So sadly, though, the virtual wine tasting is the date of our next meeting, and it's a dead conflict. So board members that are listening, if you really want to go to the virtual tasting, I'll bump the meeting, because it would be, it's $80 for the wine and the cheese, but it's donated goods, right? So it would be like $400 if everybody would come, or it'd be a lot of money, right? So if everybody's willing to do that instead, we'll reschedule our meeting. So let me know, board members.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Hi, Wachusett Vineyards. I believe are they not an Hubbardston entity?
Yes.
Are they?
Yeah, they are,
Yeah.
but they don't have a vineyard where you can buy the wine. They sell it through liquor stores around and restaurants.
No, but
they will deliver it.
No, but I wanted to point out.
home.
I just wanted to point out for the public to know that, as a matter of fact, to my surprise, I passed by there and I saw grapevines, and I'm very excited that we have a vineyard in the town of Hubbardston. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to make sure that we're also promoting our local agricultural businesses, such as the one that is sponsoring this event. And I'm really happy that they are picking this up as something that they want to help promote. So very, very, very glad to hear that.
Yes. Also, of course, if you don't want to come to the online auction and the virtual event because maybe you have a conflict, you can buy the wine and cheese anyway, right? So, but maybe we'll see how many people are really interested in doing it, and maybe bump our meeting.
Cool.
Okay, so next thing, big news, and Bill is here and he knows about it. He's heard about it. So in the papers that were documents that were posted, let's see if I have all this stuff. I have it here. I think I do. Okay. We knew that we were getting a 6-acre parcel of land through the tax title on Old Westminster Road that's wet. But this was put in not because we wanted wetland, but because it abutted a land, not completely landlocked, but mostly landlocked parcel behind it of 31.6 acres. There's a map for you. And I don't know whether we can put something up or anyway. Yeah, they were posted in the notes, right? In the notes, you can look at it. The wetlands don't match terribly well, do they?
Mm-mm.
Anyway, we now know that we have both of these parcels. So we've got a 6-acre parcel that is at where Old Westminster Road crosses to the Westminster line. The last parcel, it's 6 acres, it's mostly wet, but in the back abuts a 31.6 acre parcel, which is map 6 lot 44 if you want to look it up. And then that 31.6 acre parcel also is connected with a access strip that was included in the land taking case. They were consolidated, leading in from Streeter Road, about 5 houses down Streeter Road to the back of it. So I think Bill Murray's here. He has a chance to look at this. So we want to talk about whether it's developable. What we wanted, I never thought we would get it, honestly. And it maybe presents some great opportunities. The other thing I wanted to, that happened was actually last week, right before our last meeting, 2 weeks ago. But I had a chance to really look at more was the Pitcherville lot, which all our efforts been focused on for senior housing, which is the Old Town Gravel Pit, lot 57, we call it, because that's the assessor's reference. That cleanup winds up being more extensive than we originally thought. Basically, the original testing came up with raised enough questions that they have to go to another tier of testing. So, and that whole next round of testing costs $50,000 just for the tests. And then after the tests, then you would have to have the plan and the cleanup. And the cleanup would involve, I talked to Paige Cornell, who's the engineer that's doing this, at some length. And she said the cleanup they would excavate the leaded, the soil with the lead in it. And they would truck it out. It's not hazardous waste, but it doesn't accept it at every landfill. And it's priced by cubic yard, and she has no idea of how many cubic yards that would be. But their bottom line was, even if they will not know, of course, the ground, it's not only the soil that's the issue, it's the fact that, there's also groundwater that we have to draw a well from, right? So I said to her, should we proceed? Because we were going to work on tandem courses, thinking this was not such a big deal, that we go ahead with the feasibility study and have a design for senior housing that would fit on that lot, so that we were ready to go when the cleanup was completed. So I talked to both, had Paige Cornell on the phone, and I also had John Furman on the phone, who would be doing the feasibility study. And they both recommended, we talked about it, they hold off until we have a better idea of what the cleanup cost is going to involve. And I said, well, when might that be? And she said, the 50,000 is not quite 50, a little bit under. For the next round of testing, the town hopes to be able to fund in June. And if they did fund it in June, it would probably be that phase of the testing would be done in November. And November, we wouldn't be completely clear, but we'd have a much better idea of what we're dealing with, right? So one of the things I wanted, and Bill knows about this a little bit because I was picking his brain as well, but one of the things that I did find out is, even though the planning board recommended the feasibility study, we set aside the CPC funds to do it. It was $29,000. The town never signed it. So there is no existing document. So what I thought we should do is take a vote tonight to, I put a motion together for consideration, but basically, so the motion would be that the planning board, acting as the Affordable Housing Committee, rescind its prior to recommend that the town accept and sign the proposed due diligence study for the town-owned property on Pitcherville Road, VHB proposal number 8334219, that has not been signed by the town due to uncertainty surrounding the extent of lead contamination from the shooting range formerly located at the site and the cost of remediation. So I just want to make it clear that the complication, I think we should take our recommendation off the table until we have a clearer picture. So if I make that motion, you want to second it?
Yes.
Okay, so we got a motion made and seconded. Francois, further discussion?
Nope.
No. Bill, further comments?
Sorry, I was paying attention to something else over here. You're
No,
going to,
okay.
you're going to table the Pitcherville Road action?
We're just gonna, yeah, we had voted to recommend it to the town, and we, you know, in the CPC funds that were available. They were not appropriated. They were appropriated back in 2016 with
Right.
kind of a wide possibility of spending. So it wasn't but we had set it aside. We'd figured it in that number. But now I think we should retract that recommendation in light of the lead until we figure out, and at least until November, and wait and see what that cleanup cost is going to be. Because my concern is, if the cost is going to be $250,000, for example, we now have another site we can consider, and it may not be the best use of our money, right? So, and their recommendation was they could not even give me a ballpark what it would be. So so that's the theory. So any further discussion? Because Bill's my guest tonight. He's my celebrity guest and we need his help. So are we ready to vote?
Yes.
Okay, so Alice lived, yes.
Monroe, yes.
Steiger, yes.
Okay, so it passes. All right. So now what I asked Bill to do, I did send him sort of the update that now we have this other piece of land. I sent him an update on, I picked his brain on what we should do about the lot 57, whether we should hold off, whether we should go ahead. So he's up to speed, but what I don't understand, and I think a lot of people don't understand, is what we can actually build on one of these lots, and to the degree that we're confined to our local bylaws and how that whole system works. And Bill said he would come and explain that to us in more detail. So I'm going to turn it over to Bill. That wasn't a great introduction to the public. It's Bill Murray, Places Associates, and he's the planning board's consultant engineering. So,
Okay, so on lot 57 on Pitcherville, we have a couple, 3 or 4 concerns. One, of course, is the contamination of street sweeping, which is mostly, when it's young street sweepings, it's got a lot of salt. When it's old street sweepings, it's got a lot of biodegradable material, which make it so that you really can't build on it because it degrades over a period of time. Of course, part of that Pitcherville pit was used as a firing range for the police. And we know for sure now, because it's been tested, that we have lead contamination from the remnants of bullets and shotguns and things like that. So all of those have to be remediated before it can realistically be built for housing. And they're a concern, but I don't see them, what we call in my business, as a showstopper. They're concerned, we have to pay attention to them. Will they impact the budget? They certainly will impact the budget. The other issue is groundwater and water quality. With the lead proximal to the site, in the site, there's the potential that the lead could contaminate the local groundwater table. But because I've been working in this town for so long and know this area pretty well, I don't anticipate that's going to be an issue because the town actually owns a piece of land across the street from Pitcherville Road and up the street that is a peninsula that's surrounded by water, flowing water. So there is the potential for this site to have an off-site well to supply it, and we wouldn't have to worry about local groundwater quality. The consultant is worried about groundwater, but this site is certainly more than 20 feet above local groundwater, I would think. So we need to talk to them about that because 20 feet is not a sufficient. They're proposing to do borings only to 20 feet. And I don't think that's going to be sufficient because sand and gravel down to 40 or 50 feet. And we know where the groundwater is by the surrounding wetlands. And then finally, we have the issue with zoning in the aquifer favorability district. And I made a recommendation to Alice that if the town truly wanted to proceed on this site, we could do so as a comprehensive permit. Now, what a comprehensive permit is, it's a permit issued under Mass General Law 40B. And what it effectively does is you submit to the state and you must gain approval of the site and the conceptual site development plan from a state or federal subsidizing agency. And there are like 40 of them. Most of them are mass development. All they do is they look at your site, they look at your pro forma to say, we're going to build X amount of units, we're going to sell this amount, they'll be self-sustaining, and this is how we're going to do it. And they give you a site suitability letter. It doesn't approve the site. It doesn't say that the project's permissible. It simply says that you meet their basic criteria for affordable housing. That then goes back a little bit into the fact that the town of Hubbardston has to have an approved housing production plan approved by the Department of Housing and Community Development. So in order for a 40B to be considered, the town has to have a housing production plan, and I don't know whether we do or we do not.
We do,
Okay,
but it's expiring, but it's been approved.
it can be extended.
Mhm.
So if we have a housing production plan, it's going to identify, for the benefit of the state, our subsidized housing inventory and the fact that we don't meet the 10%, which is the threshold in the state. The state mandates that 10% of all housing units in the town should be eligible for subsidized and affordable housing. And most towns in the Commonwealth don't make that. Just to kind of clarify, it can be congregate housing, it can be affordable housing, it can be senior limited housing. So there's a whole variety of housing units that qualify for the subsidized housing inventory and meeting our 10%, but Hubbardston, I think, is down at 1 or 2%.
3%.
3%.
Group homes and
Right.
Hubbardston House.
And Hubbardston House. So in any case, we're below our 10%. So and we have a housing production plan. So we could submit to a subsidizing agency and receive a site approval letter. And all that does is it tells the local agencies, tells the town that we are eligible to proceed under the comprehensive permit process. Now, the comprehensive permit process, it's got a lot of acronyms, it's got a lot of things going on with it, but it's really very straightforward. The Zoning Board of Appeals is the permit granting authority. And when you go into a comprehensive permit, there are two types of comprehensive permit, principally two types. The standard, and then there's something called the local initiative, but they follow the same guidelines. A developer who the town would choose would submit to the town a development plan in what we call a strong schematic fashion, because what the strong schematic fashion is intended is that a developer is not going to spend millions of dollars on engineering plans if the strong concept doesn't work for the town. So they submit to the town through the Zoning Board of Appeals a comprehensive permit application. Under the comprehensive permit law, local bylaws are allowed to be waived and are waived by the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that we have local Board of Health regulations, we have local Conservation Commission regulations, and we have local zoning regulations. All of those are eligible to be waived by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and they're obligated to waive them unless there's a health, safety, and welfare concern. So that if, for example, Lot 57 is in the Aquifer Favorability District and this type of housing isn't allowed, the Zoning Board of Appeals can say, well, it's to the community's benefit, there is no threat to health, safety, and welfare, and they'd have to make that finding and it would have to be proven. And they would waive that requirement of local zoning. So the state permits, which is Title V, Septic System, Wetlands Protection Act, the Board of Health and the Conservation Commission retain their authority under the state regulations, but they don't have authority under local regulations that's superseded and taken over by the Zoning Board of Appeals. So it's a very straightforward process. The Zoning Board of Appeals approves the strong concept, which tells the developer that this is a possible project. They then submit back to their subsidizing agency to say that they've received that level of approval. And then the project goes on to detailed engineering design, and then a final review by the town, usually just the building inspector, and it's ready to go. So under there are various types of units that can be built. You can do single family homes, you can do condominiums, et cetera, et cetera. The minimum criteria is that 15% of all of the units that are for sale must be must meet the affordable criteria, which is 80% of the area median income. And I was looking up the area median income tonight, and I'm having a little trouble with it, but I think it's $80,000 in Hubbardston for a family of four. So 80% of that, somewhere in the 60s. If it is a rental project, then all of the rental units are considered affordable, and they count to our subsidized housing inventory. If it's a for sale project and they only do 15% of the units as affordable, all 15% count, but the full market value units do not count. So I did say there were two types of comprehensive permit. So the one I just described to you is the standard, where a developer, it could be a private developer, it could be a nonprofit developer, comes into town and they say, we want to build these units and we want you to let us do it. The other one is called a LIP, which stands for Local Initiative Project. And that is where the Board of Selectmen, or the executive officer of the town, if we had a mayor, is the actual applicant. So the town is making the application. And again, the developer is not the town, but the town is acting as the applicant with the developer's assistance. And LIPs are better in many ways because, number one, the Board of Selectmen would have to vote to approve it. And number two, as the applicant, the Board of Selectmen have a much stronger say into the configuration of the units, the configuration of what's going on. So the Board of Selectmen can say, look, we only want apartments and we want them all to count to our subsidized housing inventory, et cetera, et cetera. But it is a very straightforward process done throughout all of the Commonwealth. And it is something that could happen on the site pretty readily and would comply with state law, local regulations, et cetera, et cetera. Going outside of the comprehensive permit process, you are the planning board, you're the keeper of the regulations. If you think that the zoning regulations for the aquifer don't meet current criteria, and they do not, from my experience, then you have the opportunity to rewrite them in the near future, submit them to town meeting in a manner that meets more modern criteria and doesn't regulate by prohibition, which is what our current regulations do. And it's not 100% appropriate because there are certain developments, certain types of activities that can happen in an aquifer overlay protection district that can protect the aquifer. And our aquifer overlay protection district regulations are out of date.
They're regulations, they're not zoning bylaws?
Our zoning bylaw with regard to aquifer protection is out of date.
Okay, I'm just thinking there's not regulation, so it's a 2/3, it's a zoning change.
It's a zoning change, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so see, where I got bogged down is I didn't realize, I just didn't realize the parameter. So what you're saying is we don't have to squeeze it within our existing zoning bylaws if we go this route. So we could build, assuming that the groundwater issues are resolved and the soils are suitable and all the rest of it, on this 15 acres, you could put maybe 30 units or I don't know, 50 units even of senior housing.
You could do
it, right?
8 or
it's not
8 or more.
limited to.
I think it's 8 or more units an acre.
8 or more units an acre. Okay.
For rural development.
And that would be computed on how many acres are actually developable, right? So if.
Correct. Yeah.
Right, so 8 or more units allowed. Okay. All right,
So out here, we would probably have a small sewage treatment plant, and we'd likely have an offsite well. But depending upon what the hazardous waste people say, because it is a shooting range and we can anticipate that the lead is probably in a singular embankment and that it probably didn't penetrate that embankment very far, I would think that we'd be able to haul away that sand and gravel pretty readily. And the lead, I'm guessing that we could remediate the lead portion of that site pretty straightforwardly.
we have lots of fill to fill in the hole that was dredged out, right? Dug out.
Exactly.
Because
Right.
I know that that's the issues that we have. This is a good thing about this lot, right? Is there's extra sand and gravel on it to fill it in. Well, this is really helpful to me to know this. So we could actually think about this, and then hopefully in November, when we get more of a picture of what actually the cost is going to be, I think town's got to remediate it anyway, but I'm not sure if we weren't going to build housing on it, would the remediation might be less,
Yes,
or would it be the same anyway? It might be less.
it might be less.
Okay. Okay. I think they'd want to remediate it anyway. I mean, first of all, it's a hazard. And second of all, if they ever develop a municipal water supply, it's going to be a well, and it's going to be on those lots across the street that you spoke about, right? At least
Yeah.
seems to me, Rob was explaining that to me. So they're going to want to do it. At the Hubbardston House, which is what, again, I'm really sort of focused on senior housing, because when we did this vulnerability study, it was just so overwhelmingly needed. Those units are rental units. And the property is actually owned by the town, is it still, or does it owned by a developing company? Do you know?
Is it RCAP Solutions?
RCAP Solutions, do they just run it or do they own it? Do you know?
I don't know.
I don't know, but it could be either way. That, I mean, if the town built it, they would still have some kind of management company run it, right? And it would be
Yes.
rolled into the cost of, okay. And if we did those kind of units, repeat what you said about if we did a rental using this strong schematic concept and with the town putting the application in, 100% of the units, if they're rental, have to be affordable?
Are considered affordable. 100% of the units are considered affordable. And so I was working in a town, and I believe that if you're a private developer and you pursue this avenue, it's either 15 or 20 years the restrictions expire. But the town told the developer, no, you're going to keep them as rental units in perpetuity. And the developer agreed to that. So they will always be part of the subsidized housing inventory of that town. And if we chose to if we had an entity develop it for us, which we would do, and there are a lot of nonprofits out there that do that, we would tell them that and the permit would be issued with them to be rental units in perpetuity, so that they would always apply to the subsidized housing inventory if they are rental. If they're for sale, then it's a 15% of the total number of units must be affordable, and they're deed restricted.
Okay, if you sell it. All right, I get it. Okay. Okay.
Because
well,
you can't force a developer to build something and lose money. So that's the threshold under the comprehensive permit. They also, under the comprehensive permit, they're capped to the maximum amount of profit they can make under a comprehensive permit. So that there's a balancing act that developers have to do for sale units.
But if the town were to build it, wouldn't the town also face that same no profitability in it? How would they break even
Well,
on the
that's
cost
how these
on building?
that's how these nonprofit entities come in on behalf of the town and they build it. There is a marginal profit that they take so that they can continue to operate. But so there is never a no profit because they need to, they fund their operating costs out of the sales or the rentals or whatever it is.
Okay, but the town, you think the town could come up with, if the town has the land, it's like with Habitat, the town had the land, they donated the land, Habitat built the house, right, and then sold. How
Right.
does the town come up with money to invest in this project to get the units built?
They solicit it. So the town would invest in the strong concept just as a marketing procedure. And then we would solicit to the nonprofits or whomever. We'd have to go through the public bidding process and say, we have this piece of land, we have this infrastructure that we anticipate will need to be built, and we want to select the most qualified company to come and do it. And then these non-profit agencies, or even a for-profit agency, would come in and say, okay, this looks like a viable project for us. And they would make an offer to the town, and the town would then accept it or deny it and vet it prior to any kind of an award. And the award would be through the Board of Selectmen. And a savvy developer, whether it's a private entity or even the nonprofits, are going to set some ground rules to say, this is what we need the town to do to make this to work.
So who borrows the money to make it work? They do, or to build it? That they do, or the town bonds it?
Either one.
Either one, okay. Okay, so there is a path forward for 57 that we could actually do what we wanted to do if it's not, if the cleanup's not prohibitive, right? Okay, so that's excellent. So before we,
I think Francois has a question.
Francois, go ahead. Sorry, didn't see you.
I had a quick question for Bill. I heard you say earlier that the water situation here would be such that, and maybe I misheard you, but I thought you said that the water for this project there could be gotten from a lot that is across the street. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes.
And is that, what is the approximate distance, if I may ask? Are we talking about hundreds of feet, or are we talking about like tens of feet?
No, we're talking hundreds of feet, less than 1,000. But for a well that, because I've done a lot of research down in this area, and if the town were ever to pursue a public water supply to support like the town center, this could potentially be the site that could support, because if we could get either public sewer or public water to the town center, that would change the development options in the center of the town, because those are some of the worst soils in town. But just up the street and on the opposite side of the street, we have a town-owned parcel. So we could drill a well. It's already got zones of protection, DCR and everything else around it. And it could just pump right to this project and then expand if it's expandable. I'm saying that's an option. Go ahead.
No, I asked the question because I asked the question because if it is not too far away, would it not be logical that potentially if we let this contamination to continue there, it would potentially down the road, I'm talking maybe years, maybe decades, contaminate that water source, even if it is at that, even if it is at that distance, because we do know, even from the work that we did with the marijuana field, that the water does travel, and so a lot of these aquifers are interconnected, correct?
Yeah, but in this case, I think that the aquifer under the town site, lot 57, actually flows to the north and east, and the receiving
away
water
from there.
Away from there. Yeah, and I don't know that. I don't know that for a fact. That would have to be proven.
Gotcha.
Because if we did do a public water supply well, that would be something that the DEP would absolutely require a study on.
correct. Okay, well, good. So I
Here's
think
the other-
longitudinally speaking, I think the remediation effort is certainly something that ought to be considered for here, because it not only serves for this project, but also longitudinally for the purposes of providing potable water to the town.
I agree.
Okay,
And there's also.
that was all,
there are
Madam Chair.
100, there's also 160 acres behind it. That's the Millie property or more than that. I mean, a lot of land behind it too, that at some point is going to be developed. But the other thing that Bill could say is what we need to consider is if we build 24 units or less, we don't have to operate a municipal water supply, a public water supply, right? But if we put the 25th unit in, then you got to jump through a lot more hoops in terms of certifying first place and then keeping it tested and so forth, right?
Right.
I
And
don't know.
DEP has been ruthless on segregation, which is to say, oh, we're going to build a 22 unit project. And then 3 or 4 years later, you say, oh, we're going to build another 22 unit building. They will catch you on that and immediately make it a public water supply. Because I know a lot of people think that way.
Does that require like a bigger, what are the difference in terms of building costs? Is it a lot more expensive to build a municipal water supply?
Yes.
A bigger ring of protection? Is it bigger pipes? What's the difference?
So it requires a minimum of a 400-foot radius, which adds up to be like 4.5 acres of land, where nothing can be located within that radius. You can't have parking, you can't have buildings, you can't have a septic system. And it requires quarterly water quality testing by a certified lab and all those kind of things. In Hubbardston, there would no doubt be a requirement for pre-treatment because we have such high iron and some other minerals. And if you have a regular well, like we all have, you don't have those mandated requirements from the state. You just do it. You have water softener because you want one or need one, but it's not a mandate.
Okay. So.
And we went through this when we, go ahead.
Let's say, so when we make this decision, we need to think about whether it's going to be 24 or less units and then that's it. But if we're going to say, well, we'd like to try 20 units and maybe build another 20, which this is what they did at Hubbardston House, is 2 different buildings, then we should probably start with the bigger well to begin with. But then we probably should go across the street because, you know, wouldn't have to set us the 4 acres. It's already there, right? If you put the well there.
Right. So all of these are, these are all the considerations that need to be looked into. It may be that, you know, the 15 acres, you're going to put 5 aside for a well on the site. You're going to need an acre-ish, half an acre for the sewage treatment plant, leaving you 3 acres of developable other land, and then you're going to need parking and all those kind of things. So it depends on the scope and the scale of what the town believes is appropriate for that parcel. If you want to maximize that parcel, you're going to want the well offsite.
Okay, got it. All right, well, I just didn't want to invest the $29,000 in a feasibility study until it was clear that the town was going to be able to afford to clean it up and was willing to do that, you know? And I think there's not a matter of their being willing. I think it's a matter of what it would really cost. And I was I mean, we're already into it for like, I don't know, 90,000 when you add the new 50. I mean, just for the studies, right? So we'll wait till November on that. But meanwhile, I also sent to Bill these new parcels, which appears that against all odds, we're imminently going to acquire. Do you see potential in them for affordable housing?
Oh boy.
I did drive out there today for the listening public. They are, if you go out Old Westminster Road, which has actually been repaved and is a beautiful road in Hubbardston, but it's way out. You go out to the, just to the town line into Westminster, and it's that final lot. And Streeter Road, which is the access goes from, is a very poorly maintained dirt road. So, and it is 300 measuring. It's like, we do have a dead end street regulation, right? So you would have to, it seems to me, cross the wetland to get out to Old Westminster, and then develop the strip to avoid the dead end. And get going out to Westminster it's 6 acres, but 5 of them are wet, and it's the entire frontage. So you'd have to cross a lot of wetlands to do it. But
Yeah, and looking at it on some of the maps that I use, I don't think you can cross that amount of wetlands.
really,
There is a 50-foot access strip off a Streeter Road.
yeah. So we couldn't subdivide, but we could build one development.
I don't think you can get to your uplands.
Because it's too far.
Yeah, it's too much.
When they
There's
say,
something. Well, there's something under the Wetlands Protection Act that's called a limited project. And a limited project means that you have no other alternative but to cross a wetland to gain access to your uplands. But the problem here is this is all Zone A water supply. And you would not be allowed to build a driveway across that much wetlands under water protection criteria. And even if we did go under the Wetlands Protection Act, we'd be seeking a waiver from the Wetlands Protection Act, which would require a state permit under MEPA, Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act. It would be a daunting exercise, permit-wise. And
the dead end counts, if you were to use the access road, the dead end street goes to the, counts the cul-de-sac, right?
Yeah. Well, again, you could do a comprehensive permit here, and therefore your dead end regulations don't apply. But this is a really impossible piece of land to get to, unless you had rights over that access strip off the Streeter Road, which you might.
Oh, we do. It's part of it.
Oh,
It's part of the text foreclosure. Yeah.
Oh, you told me that. That's right. Well, that access strip gives you access straight to the uplands.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could fit something in there then. I have to take a look at the soils. Not much.
Well, it's only, the word has only come in. I will, this is the notice from Sandy Nason, on the tax title lots. It's stated Thursday, March 3rd. That was the notice that we got the Coke property, which is the 6th that it's gone to judgment. The Coke property is the 6-acre parcel. And then the other note from her just came in on March 16th at 4:12 p.m. What was it, yesterday? That says, we've just been, this is from the tax attorney, we've just been informed by the land court that it entered a final judgment on March 15th, 2022 in case number 20 TL so-and-so. Parcel 1, Streeter Road, that's map 6, lot 45, and parcel 2, off Streeter Road, which is the 30 acres, 6,
Right.
Parcel map 6, parcel 44, filed against West Hub Realty. I'll record the judgment in the next few days. As you know, judgment transfers ownership of the properties to the town, and therefore the town should take immediate action to secure the properties if necessary and obtain insurance. And then he says, if the town is considering selling the property, he'd be happy to assist. This is David Koppel, the land court attorney. Well, the deal we made with the town was that we would use the CPC funds from 2016 to try to acquire land, and that we then, if we did acquire the land, the Affordable Housing Committee would have release the first option to use that land for affordable housing. So, you know, it was done because there was so much back taxes owed that it would help the town no matter what. And we had absolutely nothing except the gravel pit. So it seemed like a good deal to make, but I never gave a lot of thought to it because I thought somebody was surely going to redeem a 30-acre parcel with an access road. But that didn't happen. So Bill, we need to have you help us figure out whether the Affordable Housing Committee can make use of that property.
Okay.
The it is pretty wet. There's a bunch of old trails that run out of Westminster Forest into that parcel that that come out through that access road that's on the map that are pretty old and fairly heavily used.
Mallory wetland map that she looked up doesn't match the one on Access GIS. So the Access GIS, this is the brown is, or the dark green. You think it's more extensive than that?
Yeah, I think it's wetter than that. It's let me clarify. It is absolutely wetter than that. I snowshoed through there recently because I didn't even realize it was that parcel, and the whole. Well, I don't want to say the whole thing. Most of it was pretty soggy. There are definitely some uplands there, but it's wetter than that map suggests.
So the big issue is it's all zone A water, which means it's all tributary to a water supply. So you can't have a septic system anywhere near the zone A water. I don't know if Lovewell Pond is a DCR pond or not.
It's a pond owned by the local association there. It does feed into the watershed.
I would like to, a suggestion to the board, which is that we have Bill, do we pay Bill for an opinion on the usability of this land for affordable housing? Just do some basic research and let us know whether we could do it with a comprehensive. Would you like to do that? Would you like to send us an you know, we're not looking for a.
Yeah, I understand. Well, the first thing I need to do is I need to look at soils. There's plenty of water out there. So water.
I didn't know. I forgot about that. So that's a deal, to say the least.
Yeah. I mean, the other concern is just keep in mind that this would be a development in the backyard of all the easterly streeter people. Oops, I got frozen though.
Yeah, I think they froze.
We didn't, they did.
I think it's, no, we didn't, but they did.
Yeah.
There goes.
There we are.
Here we are.
You guys froze on us.
You want to look into it for us?
I will, and I'll get you a cost estimate.
You are. Yeah, cost it to us, and we'll let you know. And you know, there's the open space people. There are other people in town. It's, you know, it's better in the town's ownership than being in tax title in nowhere land, right? So but we need to know, because we're the first dibs, if there's a possibility for us to use it, and particularly if there's not a possibility, because then that makes lot 57 or more valuable, right? So
yeah, I think there's a really great opportunity there to make a whole bunch of user groups happy with it, including doing some housing and legitimizing that trail access. So if there was a project we could come up with that provided housing on a good portion of the lot, but then legitimized all of those connections that run into Westminster Forest, it would turn into something that's pretty popular.
Somebody's doing that right now in Baldwinville, the old elementary school. They're turning that into a housing development, but also are creating more access trails behind it. So,
well, Bill, if you want to look in trails, what you can find out too, or whether it could be a combined project. But I think just the basic, we need to know where the water tables are, what the access is, and what the Watershed Protection Act restricts. That's kind of what I'm looking for out of it. So send along an estimate. And anyway, that is pretty, master plan. So that's sort of the end of this discussion, unless, this was very informative what we could do with the gravel pit. I really much appreciate your walking us through that process. And I think we've made the right decision to wait till November. It's not going anywhere. I've also told David that's what I think we want to do. And then we'll think about how we proceed with this new knowledge and the new, new cleanup costs and so on. So, all right. The only other thing I want to talk about before we adjourn here is the master plan.
Do you mind if I sign out?
You can, unless you want to listen to the plan stuff. Otherwise, okay, Bill. Thanks.
Right.
We'll look for your letter, and you can put your consultation in the bill, okay? I mean,
Yes.
in that estimate, and we'll pay you
Sure.
for your time tonight. We
Okay.
greatly appreciate it.
My
Thanks,
pleasure.
Bill.
Good night.
Good night. Okay, so 5 minutes just to talk about where we stand on the master plan. So the master plan is the two things that remain to be finished, and one of them I thought was finished, but it's not, and apparently the ball was dropped in our court, is the open space and recreation chapter, of which we started doing as sort of the two pieces. Remember, Jonathan came here and we made our recommendations, and then which included your birding and I don't know, a bunch of different things. And then he incorporated that in, and then the other part of it was done with, whatever it was. I do remember that meeting, whatever it was. I just don't have good, the recall is not what it used to be like 20 years ago. Anyway, we sent our changes in because he said he got them. So he got your suggestions, my suggestions. He said they got incorporated into a draft. I thought we had actually seen it, but I think we have not seen it. And then the open space portion of it was because the open space committee had a good map that was up to date and just a tremendous amount of information. They fed all that into the open space committee, and that open space part of it took a lot of revision. So now it's ready to pull together. It's a joint effort of Jonathan and the other ladies, MRPC.
Hand is up, I think.
Anyway, that's coming to us. It's going to be posted in documents for next time. Everybody needs to give it a final read, right? And then, Francois, I'll get to you in a minute. Let me just finish my thought. And then the other chapter that needs to be written is the implementation chapter, which is kind of nebulous in my mind. To me, it's like, how do you take all these ideas and what should we do with them, right? Mm-hmm. But apparently there is that's kind of true, but there is a structure to these things, the findings, and so Jonathan Voss has agreed to come to our next meeting and tell us how it's structured. And I said to him, well, we've got a couple of big pieces that won't be done because the deadline for getting this done is in June, which is around the corner. And they are the agricultural accessory use, right? And the town center overlay study, what was that? And he said, so I said, well, you postpone it? And he said, no, you got to finish your master plan. And what you say about those chapters are, it's in process, and you summarize where you are at that moment and you close out the master plan. So a lot of these grants are like time sensitive, and that's what we have to do. Okay. So I just want everybody to know, really important, when we get to the meeting next time, everybody's read that recreation open space, and we close it out and we listen to what he has to say on the implementation chapter. And that has a grant too that is time sensitive, and the whole thing is going to be done by June. So That's it. Town meeting is June 7th. Oh, you have another, Francois, question about the master plan?
Oh, not a question about the master plan. I just wanted to advise the planning board and you, Madam Chair, that on the 12th of April, I am actually, I have to fly out and I will be out of the state for another at least minimally 2 to 3 weeks. And so as a consequence of that, any meetings that have to take place, if we do not have Zoom capabilities, I will not be present. And I know that the quorum as of lately has been a little bit more difficult to achieve. Just want to give you a heads up on that, okay?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
The other item I did want to mention is briefly, and it's more a question. When is it that we are reviewing, or when are the bylaws being reviewed by the select board? Because I thought that we might want to make sure that we have a representation of our board during those meetings with the select board.
Right, Francois, I saw your email on that. And I actually called David to ask him. I also wanted to check, I sent him some revisions and they weren't in the draft warrant I saw. And what those revisions were, you all know about, but he didn't. But it wasn't the best bylaw. It was the accessory apartment bylaw, and they were the use permits had to be changed to allow them in the districts, right? So I asked him, call him up and to make sure he had those, which he did, and he's going to incorporate. He's got the best changes, which I reformatted so it was consistent A, B, C, D, E, F, and Mallory proofread, and all those changes that came in from anybody. He has that. And so I said to him, so when do I said, these are not new concepts. They've already been presented. Is the select board going to want us back to go over it again? And he said he didn't know, but he'd let me know. Okay. So it sounds like I should go on Monday as well. So remind me Monday I'll also ask on Monday if they want any other kind of presentation on those before they vote, or are they ready to vote without us running through them again? Okay, I'll ask on Monday. That's the answer I got, Francois.
Thank you. And the next question is actually for Mallory. Did we have any follow-ups with regards to the letters to the solar fields for their annual reports?
I sent an email. I haven't got anything back.
To all of them?
Yep. I used Christina's master.
Okay.
So I haven't gotten.
Can you follow up this week with them and tell them that they're absolutely due and it's important?
Sure.
Okay, she's going to make calls.
Is it something that's worth sending a certified letter for, or?
You sent regular letters, right?
Yeah. Oh, I sent emails.
Yep.
Emails.
Yep. Verified if you want.
Might be also important, but I'm sorry, I think it might be important to let them know that that is something that had been stipulated in the
Generate.
Thank you.
Because if we do it by a certified letter with a green card, then we can say you received this
and you didn't
chose to do nothing with it, as opposed to
I sent you an email.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you just go right to the certified.
All right. I will do that.
As long as they've had like a week and they haven't gotten back to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So town meeting is June 7th.
Yeah.
Town election is June 14th.
Yeah.
And the only member we have running is John Demalia. And has he told you he's going to run? Have you talked to him at all? Okay. I need to call John and make sure. He took the 1-year term last time, and nobody else's term is up. So it's
not the best man knowledge.
Okay. And then one other thing, when we did the zoning bylaws, there's 2 things that are still on my to-do list while I'm chair. Because I'm not doing it next year. A few things actually. I wanted to say the solar bylaw. Why am I'm thinking of Paige, and what's the other? The other MRPC.
John Hume.
Oh, Jennifer.
Oh, Jen Burney.
Yeah, Jennifer Burney. She says as soon as she's done working on the overlay district with the ED, we will start on the solar.
Okay.
So that's the update on that. I'm still waiting I hope during the next, before we meet again, to finally get the revisions that I know need to be made to the zoning bylaw made. So we're going into town meeting with an accurate bylaw, and then we just have to update by adding the best and the new one, right?
Yeah.
So that I haven't lost track of that. And the ball got dropped in my court on the scenic road, which I'm just trying to finalize that whole process a little bit more. We voted on the decision format, didn't vote on an application format, and they should match each other so we're clear to the public what we're looking for. Okay, so we have to sign this plan, which doesn't have to be done while we're in session because we've already approved it, right?
Mhm.
So is there anything more anybody wants? Otherwise, somebody can make a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we, making a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Okay, who want a second?
Second.
Good. Second? Okay, all in favor, lived all eye.
Monroe, aye.
Tiger eye.
Okay, we'll see you guys on the 7th.